The Sydney Sweeney jeans controversy. If you haven't seen it, it's an ad, and we can chuck it in actually.
Genes are passed down from parents to offspring, often determining traits like hair color, personality, and even eye color. My genes are blue.
Sydney Sweeney has great genes.
Euphoria is where she really gained a name. But she's in, interestingly, we talk about how technology has influenced what we consume. She's been in Handmaid's Tale, Euphoria, and White Lotus, which are 3 really big shows, TV shows though. But now she's becoming a movie star as well. But this is an American Eagle ad for jeans. And there's been some controversy around it because it's playing on the idea of genes and genetics, and genes is in the genes that you wear.
Because they say Sydney Sweeney has good genes. Is that the byline?
Yeah, genes are passed down and my genes are blue because the genes are blue. However, some people are saying there are racial connotations to it, and I don't know what you think about that. We're just commenting on what... It's interesting that people can get so fired up about something like this, and really the company... It's working well for the company because it's courting a lot of controversy. It reminds me of the American Apparel ads where they would create quite racy ads, but they would do it on purpose and create a lot of controversy around it, and it ended up becoming a bigger company because of that actual approach to advertising. It was guerrilla advertising, you could call it.
Guerrilla advertising.
Well, guerrilla
Tell me more about what that is. What's guerrilla advertising?
Well, the reason I know about it is because Ryan Holiday was the director of marketing at the time. Ryan Holiday, we've talked about before, is a stoic writer, and talks about, he's a prolific author now, but he learnt how to hijack that early phase of the internet for controversy around, especially because websites such as the Huffington Post, what's the other one? They've kind of just disappeared now, but the ones that made a lot of money from clicks and advertising clicks.
BuzzFeed.
Was that one?
BuzzFeed, and things like that. Thank you.
Yeah, I haven't seen BuzzFeed for years.
Yeah, because they've kind of gone out. And Gawker was another one, which, funny enough, Ryan Holiday wrote a story about how Hulk Hogan and Peter Thiel brought down Gawker. Anyway, he was coming up at a time where you could generate a lot of controversy by just basically calling up a reporter and saying, they put up a bad ad, a supposedly bad ad, and then they call up a reporter and tell them how upset they were about it, but it was them that actually put the ad up, for example. So they would generate this controversy online, first version of it was probably pre-mobile internet. And so people would and then they would feed off that story. So one person would write the story, but then it was an idea of how quickly can we get it to our other subsidiaries or even different news sites so we can generate more money, generate more clicks, because journalists, they still are at the time, were often paid by how many people clicked on their story. Yep. So the more controversial, more racy, more salacious you could make your story, the more clicks you would get on it, because that's what would fund the advertising revenue of these newer media companies like Huffington Post and BuzzFeed. Yeah. But it's not really a new concept.
Well, I was going to say, the very way you talk about it shows that this is not a new thing in any way. The whole idea that sex sells is a very old concept. And the fact that you would, the sort of the blonde bombshell kind of character in these advertisements is definitely not a new concept. And also the whole controversy point. It's not like American were caught off guard and go, is there a double meaning to genes? Oh, sorry, we didn't realise. It's clearly they courted the controversy. They wanted this to blow up in that same Ryan Holiday kind of way. Yeah. And also it's just, what is maybe newer now is the attention economy that we talk about, and the fact that we are generating clicks and views, and you get noticed in this moment. For this week, by the time this comes out, we probably even stop talking about it. It'll be old news, because the attention economy moves so fast through these things. And works on outrage as well. Wants to make people upset, so they've baited outrage intentionally, so that they'll get their particular moment in the sun. And yeah, I mean, it seems to be, by reports, it's going well for American Eagle's financial prospects. So, I mean, from a business marketing perspective, it's worked. It's done exactly what they wanted it to do.
And I don't know if this is for sure, but it's kind of like Ryan Holiday, he wrote, his book is Confessions of a Media Manipulator, that they've done this to create controversy and then driven the controversy around it.
Oh, absolutely. Well. Yeah.
But it's interesting that we sometimes, do we want to believe that, or we don't want to understand that actually might be the case? What do you think, Stu? I'm interested in your take on this. Do we want to believe that people have those nefarious ideals behind creating controversy?
Yeah, I mean, there's that old adage that all publicity is good publicity. So sometimes controversy has driven marketing. When Monty Python brought out Life of Brian, all the Christian demonstrations against Life of Brian actually pushed the sales of that movie and gave it more publicity. So lots of publicity is sometimes seen as a good thing. It's funny though, because in the modern world of the internet, you've got some advertising campaigns that cause controversy that fail and some that succeed. So you've got like the CEO of Jaguar has just resigned recently. Apparently he's retired, but there's talk about the fact that the big rebrand that Jaguar has just done, where they've started again, completely wiped their history of all the James Bond kind of middle-aged men wearing tweed jackets driving around in British racing green. Jaguars through the countryside.
We talked about that, didn't we?
Sean Connery.
A little bit, I think.
They've tried to kind of start again because obviously that generation's, but they went full electric. They, made real colourful and all that. So yeah, apparently they sold 42 cars in the last 6 months in Europe or something. So that's not been a great sales run.
Wow.
No.
So that didn't work. And then there was the Dylan Mulvaney controversy.
Oh, with Bud.
With Bud Light. That seemed to tank their brand. But that, again, was like a controversial ad that was trying to...
And they went the completely other way. We're getting Shane Gillis, the comedian, to now promote their brand.
Yeah. So there is this left-right paradigm that is interesting to watch. Some commentators are saying that's shifting, some aren't.
But that's also the best way to generate controversy is to, own the libs or to bait the right or whatever. Like that's how you generate the controversy is to actually intentionally throw out something that that because of the polarization, if you just need a little bit of a sniff of something and the other side is going to overreact because that's our attention-seeking economy. And so, I think this is the Dylan Mulvaney thing didn't go the way that they thought it would go. And whereas this one seems to have done exactly what they wanted in terms of getting enough controversy to blow up. And so as we talk about communication, like it is communicating the brand, it's communicating a story in just the way that they want.
And I think the brand with American Eagle is aimed at their customer base, whereas both those other examples we talked about was trying to change the customer base.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think the Bud Light crew, who were all drinking beers at the football, they didn't dig the commercial, but I suppose not enough people from the left wanted to jump onto that brand to make it worth their while. So same with Jaguar, there wasn't that kind of their traditional market just didn't want to have a bar of it, so they kind of lost their market. Whereas American Eagle have lent right into the kind of the thing there. It's interesting that Beyonce's done a ad for Levi jeans, and Levi jeans is more of I think commentators would argue they're a bit more left-leaning as a company, and so they're leaning into that.
I did read that Lizzo has already released a song commenting on that has a comment in the song about it, the actual jeans ad.
It's so rapid, isn't it? With
that's
technology,
the thing, isn't it?
And that's why it's relevant for today, because you can have an ad come out, and next minute you've got a song about it that's come out within a week.
Yep.
It's crazy.
Yeah, and the fascinating thing that Lizzo has jumped onto the controversy to give her 2 cents in it, which anyone can obviously, but there's also this element of there's some controversy, let's ride the wave. That's the other thing that you have to be aware of, I think. One more question before we kind of get into what we were going to talk about. Do you think as Christians we should either be more aware of this kind of media manipulation and what happens, or do we just choose to avoid it? Because I'm thinking of the Andy Crouch's work, issue of do we critique it, do we consume it, do we actually create our own? How do you think we should respond as Christians as this kind of thing happens?
Well, I think what we've been saying over a while now is that we, in the midst of all this content creation, we create our own content and create our own culture, particularly at the local area, but being conscious of the fact that no local area is impervious to international influences. So globalism is such now that technological communication and advances in digital technology mean that every person on earth almost is aware of what's happening outside of their immediate context. So I think as Christians we do live in a world that's incredibly connected. I think that, as we've said before, and Andy Crouch has mentioned this, that some people try and jump onto that bandwagon and go with that culture. Some people decry it and say we shouldn't have anything to do with it. Other people try and critique it, I suppose kind of like we're doing today. But the real gospel, well, the heart of the gospel is to share the message of the good news within the context that we're in. And so I think sometimes there'll be opportunities for us using digital technology to actually get the controversial message of the gospel out, because actually the message of the gospel is far more controversial than anything we've talked about today. So, yeah, I mean, well, maybe not more controversial. I mean, this whole Sydney Sweeney argument is all about genetics and eugenics, and is it a harking back to a racist past, and there's all these really deep arguments going on around a commercial. But I think it's getting eyeballs, and people are interested in talking about things more and more these days. I think we've talked in a previous podcast about long form podcasts that still have a place, not for everybody, but people really do want to think deeply about what's happening in the world that we're in. And if we can bring the light of the gospel to bear on that, I think that's exciting. My friend Tom Morgan in England, who's leading Light Church in Swindon, he was saying to me on the phone the other day that across England they're just amazed at how many young people are starting to come back to church, and they're calling it a quiet revival. They're not sure if it's going to last or whatever, but he said in his new church plant that he's just set up, he's had some young adults come to church who have been thinking about the gospel because they've seen a Christian content on TikTok, gone and bought themselves a Bible, and then rocked up to church to ask Tom if he could help them to read it because they don't know how to read it. So that's pretty exciting. So it's not all doom and gloom, but it's also not all beer and Skittles either.
What's interesting, the gospel is, and this is a great segue, I just want to get Tim's thoughts on that too, but the gospel is still alive and active, isn't it? Whether it's online or it's people just going to buy a Bible because they've seen it on TikTok and then they need to chat about it and understand how to read it and know what it's saying. And
it's interesting, the impulse to go and be with people in the flesh. It's really interesting that you might come up with an idea online, but you still want to meet with someone like Tom. Can you help me to read this? I think that's really exciting.
Tim, your thoughts on between about Christians understanding that this is kind of happening in media?
Yeah, I think it is important that we are aware of these things. I think there's two things going through my mind. One is that, yes, it's good to be aware that, obviously media manipulation happens and all these kinds of different stories. The other thing that's in my mind because of an article I read this week is just how much time we give to the attention economy and these kinds of fast-moving trends. And I read an article, we can put in the show notes, it's called The War on Attention is a Spiritual War, by a guy called Ben Crosby, who's seems to be an Anglican minister in Canada. But there's a quote here, it's a problem that is facing us in new ways, with the best of human ingenuity currently being deployed precisely to make it harder for us to attend to and thus love God and neighbour in an undistracted way. I don't think it's intentional that Meta and TikTok engineers are sitting in their offices thinking, let's make it harder for Christians to pray. But their attempt to monetize our attention has, I think, exactly this effect. We need to recognise that the platforms and technologies are not neutral, that our ready addiction to them is not accidental, but by design, and they are set up in a way that makes our Christian life more difficult. And so that's my other thing in terms of these kind of, controversies that come and go in a fairly rapid cycle. And I think it's, while we need to be aware of how media is manipulated and the stories are told and those kinds of things, I think there might also be a wisdom of actually being disconnected and not knowing about these things, that there might be perhaps that there's a spiritual discipline of being uninterested in the latest things, in terms of, if that means that you're actually using your time, you can be uninterested and be still wasting your time. But if our love for God and love for neighbour is coming at the expense of not being up to date on, these kind of fast moving TikTok trends, that's probably a good thing. But again, just trying to work out the balance of those kinds of things.
It's like a toss up between like, what is your sphere of influence take into as well? Like, where can you be influential, hopefully for God's glory as well? Because I was having a discussion with my kids on the way home from swimming actually the other night, and they were talking about like, my son asked me a question, what do you think is like popular now as technology, but will be like in a few years' time just won't even matter? That was the question he asked. I'm like, I'm not sure, because we were talking about AI. I still don't know what the answer to that question is, but we were talking about how AI is really interesting, and I've been looking at a lot of different AI kind of modes, or like things like Notebook LLM, and I found another one called Lex, which actually helps you write, but it gives you feedback as you are writing like an article or something. So it's not writing the article for you. You write something and then you say, help me understand this better, give me feedback on what else I should be putting in. And it says, try connecting the idea differently, and then you try and do it yourself. So it's interesting how people are using it differently. But I said, one thing that I've kind of picked up from talking to you guys on this podcast is that technology is always changing and always increasing in what it's going to supposedly benefit for us. But we had washing machines and dishwashers come in, and that was going to give us a whole lot of time. And in the end, it really just freed up time to fill it with more other things. I think it's saying the same thing with AI. But the one thing it does miss, I suppose, is that we are built in the image of God, and we are made for relationship. And that's the interesting thing when you were saying those guys in England, is that their initial impulse is to go and talk to someone about it. And I think that's what's really interesting. And now we're about to get into talking about communications, is how do we create Christian content? This is my thought a lot of the time now, is how do we create Christian content that is going to bring people to God, glorify God, but then also not be the main way that people are getting to know God.